Well, good evening. My name is Fabian M7ECG. I have once again come up with a topic which kind of interests me, and many people may have not kind of ever bothered having a little think about. What I'm going to be talking about today is number stations. Number stations is quite a unique kind of thing, just because they're readily available for everyone kind of to tune in and listen into it. And it's this mythical kind of theory about it. What is it for? Why do we have number stations? Is it some kind of spies talking to each other? Is it secret messages being passed on to like James Bond likes? Or is it kind of like talking about the politics of the world with us kind of unbeknownst, not really knowing what's going off? So that's what I'll be talking about today, number stations, basically what they are, how we can kind of listen into it, what we think it could be. I'll give you a couple of examples as well. I have actually kind of mistaken what I was going to do. I was going to show you two live kind of interceptions of these transmissions, but I've kind of mixed up the UTC and British summertime, so I was an hour too late. However, we have got a station transmitting in about 15 minutes, which is a Polish station with a female voice called Churta, and I'll be trying to get that on the internet or onto the presentation, so to kind of see live what's happening. But at a later point as well, I'll be talking a little bit more about how the classification works and how these number stations are kind of being put into different categories. So as I said, what we're talking about is what are these number stations, the formats which are being used during the transmission, the transmission technology actually used by these number stations, and how do we classify these stations, so categorize them in different kind of areas. Initially, the idea was 2 or 3 live intercepts of number stations, one which was a French station called F06A, and then 2 intercepts of an English station, E07A. However, tonight it's going to be S11A. I'll tell you, S11, S stands for Slavic, so Slavic kind of speaking languages. You might figure out F could be standing for French, which is the case, and E is for English. So rather than a French and 2 English stations, it's just going to be 1 station tonight, but I'll be giving you some more examples as well, of how these number stations work. And some have got nicknames as well, which I'll tell you a little bit more about. So as I said, what are these number stations? They're quite mysterious transmissions you can pick up just with a shortwave transceiver, or receiver, to be honest. And normally they include voice, Morse, or data messages. So the voice ones are the easiest ones. Number station being quite straightforward. It's numbers being read aloud in a certain pattern. Morse, again, it's going to be Morse, but mainly kind of specifying numbers. And data, it's going to go along the lines of like FSK, so the frequency shift keying or phase shift keying in order to transmit the data. The one I want to kind of focus on tonight is the actual voice transmission, and these voice messages being passed on. So there is this theory that these number stations are used to transmit encrypted messages to spy in the field. Again, there is various films out there. One I can highly recommend is actually called Number Station, and it basically follows a couple who work at one of this number station. He is kind of the security guard, so to speak, for this mysterious station in the middle of nowhere. And the lady, she actually sits behind the microphone and reads out the numbers. She's got no idea what they're for. He has got no idea what they're for. They basically get an email once or twice a day. She has to go on the radio and read out the numbers. And the film, as it kind of progresses, shows you the other side as well. So when the spies are actually then receiving the data or these numbers, scribbling down into a pad, which I'll show you an example in a moment, and basically that's how they get the instructions. So talking about this pad, it's called a one-time pad, where they decode these messages, and without it, you would just listen to a string of numbers. Think about it like the Enigma done, which the Nazis have used back in Germany. So if you knew the keyword, you were able to decode the message. If you don't know the keyword, it's just random gibberish coming out, which you won't be able to decode. But obviously having this one pad code or one-time pad, you'd be able to decode what's happening, Normally, the way, again, what they're thinking or theorizing is on this one-time pad, there will be a specific number identifying which page of this pad to use. And then you can listen to the message being passed as numbers, and you will then be able to decode it. Once you've used that one specific kind of encryption number, you get rid of the pad. That's it. You've used a new one, and you've used it for this one-time purpose. And again, if someone collars you and finds a pad with just random numbers on you, you could say Sudoku or something. So again, it's one of these kind of secret things. You, even if it gets caught on you, you can just deny and say, yeah, nothing to do with it. Again, these number stations being so unique that it's just numbers being passed across allows for complete anonymity. So again, I could be sending it across and no one would have an idea what it's for or who it's coming from. That's the biggest issue, that these number stations can't really be located because they are worldwide. It's quite difficult to kind of triangulate them and find out where they are. A few have been uncovered, and it has been admitted by the individual countries to say, yes, that's one of ours. However, it's just a station transmitting some random numbers. It's had no purpose for anything whatsoever. How much we want to believe it, that's up to you. But there is certainly something behind it, and certainly there might have been some reason why they have been used. So these number stations are actually using shortwave and shortwave transmission. A really good idea because they can easily be received and they carry ridiculously long distance. So we have got one, which I'll be talking about in a moment, called the Lincolnshire Poacher, which was actually based at Cyprus. And that was used, theoretically, potentially, for field agents here in Europe, mainly from the kind of British Secret Service. That is the theory behind the Lincolnshire Poacher. The UK government has admitted to having had a shortwave transmission station in Cyprus, but that's as far as it goes. So we've not really discovered anything further about this particular station. And again, talking about the formats used in this transmission. So they normally use the same format. All the stations use the same format, but they can either begin on the hour or every half hour. And there are certain stations as well who, for example, on the hour will send a code message to say, right, we're going to be transmitting in XYZ minutes, and you need to use this one-time pad. The message will be so long, and then it goes silent. And then 20, 30, 40 minutes later, the station actually kicks in and starts transmitting. Sometimes, there's certain stations, they have gone offline, they're not used anymore. These stations used to transmit 5 or 10 minutes apart. The first two transmissions, for example, were complete fake. It was just nothing. But the third one was actually the one with the message being sent out. So again, to confuse people, if people are trying to kind of decode these messages, they kind of throw in this little red herring in there to say, yeah, okay, there's a very important message coming. People were trying to decode it. It was nothing. The actual important message was the kind of third transmission being sent across. Talking about the individual segments, so we normally start with the ID, which is the identification of who the message is for. Can be anywhere between 3, 4, or 5 digits long. We then go into the group count, which means how many groups of 4 or 5 digits will be sent. So let's say we've got an ID which is 1, 2, 3, and then the group count could be 32. So 32 individual groups of 4 numbers will be sent. I'll give you an example when we come to actual stations, but at the moment we kind of just brush over it. So the initial thing is the identification of who the message is for, the group count of how many groups we will be sending, but then there's the actual message. And that's the encrypted message for the recipient, and we will not be able to kind of understand what it is. We can guesstimate and maybe have an idea, but without this theoretical one-time pad, we wouldn't be able to get any further. So the technology used by number stations is very, very simple. So, as I said, only a few of these stations have actually been tracked down or located. Technology usually remains the same. They are stock shortwave transmitters using powers from 10 kilowatt to about 100 kilowatt. So, yes, it's powerful. However, you wouldn't really be able to see anything. They could be put into a tiny little kind of shed, and then it's got a huge antenna array behind it, and you could just say, well, that's for the local airport. So very easy to hide if you know how to kind of hide antennas, and the actual transmitters don't have to range very far. What I've put in the bottom here is one of these pictures of a Morse code generator. So this is actually one where you can type the individual numbers in and the message. It will then print out the Morse code, which you can then feed into a machine, and it will then transmit that the Morse code kind of message. Again, for the spies in the field, we only need very kind of low-tech equipment, which is very good. So that's why we stick with this shortwave, because you can get a shortwave transmitter very cheap. If it breaks, you just go to a local hardware store or Radio Shack and you get a new one. So they are still very useful compared to mobile phones, just because they are so cheap to replace and very easy to kind of maintain. The problem is with high-tech equipment for kind of message passaging, there is the risk of being intercepted, especially if it is a kind of like running on Wi-Fi or mobile data. It's quite easy to kind of jump in there. Now, if you would be a spy in the field with a shortwave radio, you can very easily say, well, there's nothing there. I'm just listening to the local football or to a radio station in a different country. It's very easy to kind of just brush it off. I mean, quite a few of us, I think as well, who are taking part tonight, will have an FM AM transmitter in their car or when they're going out walking. So you could theoretically be a spy and get some secret messages being put through FM or AM, but then you can turn around and say, oh, well, I'm an amateur radio operator and I just use that to communicate with my friends. So again, if you're a spy with a shortwave transmitter or transceiver, you can really easily say, well, I'm just an enthusiast and I'm not really doing anything. So very good to kind of just say, there's nothing nasty going off. I'm just interested in shortwave radio. And I've come across a few people who have loads of shortwave transceivers, and you never know, they could be involved in some big plots which involve the government and stuff like that. So very easy to kind of just brush it under the carpet. Now, talking about the classification of these stations, quite good ones. The way it works is we've had this European Numbers Information Gathering and Monitoring Association. You can see from the initials, it's actually called Enigma. Clever. Now, Enigma has run from 1993 until 2000, and then has been continued by Enigma 2000. They're still live. They have got a website. I'll show you the link at the end of the presentation. And they are kind of listening out as a group of enthusiasts who are all listening out to these kind of shortwave transmissions. As soon as they pick up a number station, they will listen to the pattern, if there's a schedule or if there's kind of a regularity to it. They will try to triangulate it with colleagues and other enthusiasts across the whole world using Yagi antennas and things like that to try and pinpoint where they are. Even if it's just a rough country, that will still help us. And then they will put different classification down as well, which I talk about now. So they're basically these designators, and they're normally a alphabetic prefix followed by an ordinary number. So it counts from 01 to 02, 03, and so on. So as we were talking earlier about one, this E07A, which we were going to listen to, if the number station starts with an E, it means it's an English language voice broadcast. If it's G, we're looking at Germans. S for Slavic. V is voice broadcasts in all other languages. So if it's Argentinian or Spanish or you name it, it will just fall under V. If it begins with an M, we're looking at Morse code. F would be the frequency shift keying digital mode, so RTTY, for example, and P would be your phase shift keying digital modes like PSK31. XP, yes, there are still a few around, which is these Russian 7 digital modes. It's something they have developed. I've not really grasped the whole kind of thing behind it because I kind of been focusing more on the voice broadcasts because they're the most interesting. The digital modes, you just hear random chirping noises, and unless you have the actual equipment to decode it, you're not going to get any further. Your HM, they're the hybrids of analog and digital modes. So talking at some examples, so this is the one we were hopefully going to listen to. Well, not the Lincolnshire poacher itself. It was the colleague called Cherry Ripe, and that was E07A. So the way I've kind of put this down is we start with the Enigma ID, and for the Lincolnshire poacher, it's E03. And then it has actually been classed as the Lincolnshire poacher, as I mentioned. We then have the different frequencies they could be using as well, and it does range for quite a few. Then I'll be talking about the status, which at the moment is inactive. It used to be a female voice, used to be the upper sidebands, and it was located somewhere in Europe. So initially we were thinking it was UK or Cyprus. And after, I think it's taken them about 4 to 5 years to actually kind of find out where it was, because they're all part-time enthusiasts. They have got day jobs as well. They have figured out it was actually Cyprus, and it used to be one of the kind of British bases there, and that's where it came from. So now talking about the, as I said, the kind of transmission formats, the Lincolnshire poacher is called the Lincolnshire poacher because it used to play the folklore song of the tune of the Lincolnshire poacher. Normally was repeated 12 times, sometimes it's a bit shorter. And then, as I said, there is this identification number. Now, because the Lincolnshire poacher is quite a unique kind of sound, they didn't actually give it an ID number. They just played the tune and you recognized, right, this is the station I'm listening to. And then it was giving you the 5-digit groups. So it was telling you it's 39715, random numbers to us. And that would be repeated 10 times. It will then start with 6 chimes, and then you get your actual message. So as we were talking about group count, we've had, so they're 5-digit groups, but there's 200 of them. So 200 times would you hear 5 random numbers, mainly repeated, just to make sure you record them correctly. Either once, twice, or 3 times would they be repeated before it then moves on to the next number. You then have your 6 chimes, and it plays the Lincolnshire poacher again for a further 6 times. So I've got the example here. I'm hoping it's going to play through correctly, so you can have a listen to that and see what it would sound like. 5. So there we go. That would be kind of the beginning of a Lincolnshire poacher transmission. And if you wouldn't know what you're listening for, it would just sound like random numbers. But the people who receive these messages and they're actually addressed to, they have got a very good idea of what's going off and will be able to kind of decode that message. This is what the Lincolnshire poacher actually looked like. So this is the Cyprus base. I hope the pictures can be kind of identified a little bit. On the left-hand side, you can see quite a big antenna array. In the middle, we've got some further kind of higher antennas. But that's the kind of way it looked like. Again, you could say this is just a big radar system, for example, or you could just brush it off as being something for a local airport. So it blends in quite well. You wouldn't be able to see it from space. And yeah, this is basically how they've run these stations. So another one I want to talk about is it's the Enigma ID is E07. So again, we're looking at an English-speaking station. This one is called the Englishman, very inventive. But this is actually still active. So it's a male voice transmitting in the upper side band, and it has been located around Moscow, Russia. Again, we're looking at a kind of 2-minute beginning, which is your 3-digit ID, which is being repeated 3 times, which is 845, 845, 845. It will then say we're going to play one message, and we are playing this 3-digit group, which is 728. It will be 26 times repeated. It will then repeat 728, that it's a 3-digit code, and then it will again say we're repeating it 26 times. And then it's going out into this 5-digit single groups, and they will being repeated, or there will be 26 different 5-digit groupings, and then it just finishes with a 0, 0, 0. So I'll just play you this quickly as well, and you can have a listen to how the Englishman would sound like.
3, 1, 8. 3, 1, 8. 3, 1, 8. 1. 5, 9, 8. 2, 3, 9. 5, 9, 8. 2, 3, 9. 9, 7, 3, 1, 6.
So I'll stop it there because it will just repeat over and over. So you can tell as well, it's mainly a pre-recorded snippet of individual numbers, and they kind of just get mixed together or programmed together, and it will just read it out automatically. Some actually are being spoken live as they occur. There is one called the Bored Englishman, and he is, he sounds very bored, like he could be sitting in the pub with a nice cold beer, but he has basically been drafted in to read out these numbers. The majority of them are pre-recorded little snippets like you have at the train station, for example, and it gets reprogrammed in a certain way to just read it out as they're programmed. The majority of them are that way. There's only a few which are actually spoken out live. We'll now just change the language completely. And this is not a language as such. I just wanted to show you how kind of the stations could be hidden away. So this one is called UVB76. This has been categorized or classified way before Enigma has started in 1993. So this was one that actually picked up shortly after the Cold War, around the 80s, when everything kind of started to cool off a little bit. And it's been given this classification, and mainly it's being called the buzzer. I think the only noise I have is the actual buzzing noise, which is the identification. So similar like Lincolnshire Poacher would play the folklore tune, this one just has a horrible, horrible loud buzzing noise. And that would be the kind of buzzing noise to identify, right, I'm coming on air, I'm going to be sending you a message very shortly, and you basically need to listen out. But the one I want to tell you about is still an active station as well. So this one is called G06. It's called the German Lady. Frequencies I can't tell you because it does change quite a lot. So they have not been able to kind of figure out directly which one this is. But as I said, it's still active. It's a female voice being spoken, and mainly in the upper sideband, but you can also pick it up in the carrier signal. And with this one, we are located in Smolensk, near Russia. Again, we've got 3-digit IDs, then we've got a 3-digit group, which is repeated twice. The group count, 90 in this case, will be repeated twice, and then she will give you 90 5-digit paired groups. So twice they will be repeated. So we're looking at 180 individual message snippets, but they're always being repeated every second one. I'll play you this quickly, and then we're going to try and see if we can head over and actually intercept that live transmission, which should be starting very shortly. So we'll have a quick listen to her.
2, 2, 4, 5, 5. 2, 2, 4, 5, 5. 2, 5, 9.
We'll come in a second. I just want to quickly jump onto the actual live transmission then. I'll just have to... So this is basically a web SDR receiver, and that gives you a very good kind of indication as to what's happening. So I'm hoping it's going to transmit. I can't guarantee it, this one. No, I think this one might be a no, I'm afraid. So the problem is with this F06. So it's a French station based anywhere around Moscow, Russia, Orenburg, kind of in that region. It's actually sending on FSK, so we should be able to hear some random kind of noise. The problem is it's a very irregular kind of transmission pattern. There is not much happening. Unfortunately, whilst I was talking, we have missed the Slavic station. However, in the next 10 minutes, I'll have the English station coming on again, which was the original one I wanted to actually show you. So I'm just going to set myself a kind of reminder that, yeah, at 7:10, 8, obviously being our time, we'll have Oblique coming on, which is based in Warsaw, Poland. So I'll set myself a timer to make sure that we definitely hit this one. And what we can do is we'll go back to our German lady and of her and what she has got to tell for us. So we'll just continue the rest. Also, she's got quite a unique kind of accent. So rather than say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, she says 5, which is just kind of a very interesting accent she kind of puts in, which makes it quite unique for her. 2, which would be the German 2, she pronounces as 2 as well. So I would say she's more Eastern German. And that's how she finishes her transmission, just by saying 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. That's how it finishes. I'll go quickly into another one as well, which is still active as well. So M23 for being Morse. It's not been given a classification name as such. We just know it as M23. It's still an active station, but this one is actually a CW, a Morse one, based in France somewhere. Again, it will last for about 10 to 15 minutes. I'm just going to show you a quick snippet, and I'm not going to have to explain much. This is basically just Morse. And the good thing about this one is I like it because it's particularly slow, so it's very easy to decode the individual numbers, not the message as such, but the individual numbers. So just a couple of important resources or websites I've used to kind of prepare this presentation. One website is called priom.org, which is very good because it's got a database of all the individual stations, and it shows you as well station schedule, which is really good. Now, Enigma 2000 actually has changed their website. It's now called signalshed.com. I didn't find that resource too interesting. There wasn't not very much on there. It's mainly just a forum you can sign up, and then you get access into more details. But as in, like, if you're not signed up for it, there's not much information you can find. But number/stations.com is also a very good website, which I have found quite important and very good information on there. What I'll do is I'll just swap the screen. We'll show you this Priom website, which I really like. So I'm hoping this kind of works itself out. Yeah, so it all looks, again, very kind of mystic as to what's going off. In the center here, it shows you the UTC time. So obviously they're 1 hour kind of behind us. It's 9:04. The next station will be in 6 minutes, which will be E11. So it's that English-speaking station. Now, when you click on these, as soon as something appears, you can click on it and it will open this SDR page where somewhere, anywhere in this country, someone has got like a SDR receiver which you can tune in and then listen to these kind of transmissions quite easily if you haven't got the equipment yourself. And this changes. Whenever a station has transmitted, it will flick onto the next one and it will do quite easy. So looking down then on this schedule, for example, if we go down to 7:10, we can actually find the station we're going to be listening to. So here we go, E11, which will be playing on 4181 kilohertz, and it's the upper sideband. If you click on E11, it will jump across. So this one is the Enigma RD E11. It's also known or kind of understood as oblique. It's still an active station because, again, it will be transmitting very soon. And as I said, this one is kind of located in Warsaw, Poland. It has got a schedule. So there have been various schedule entries. And it's the opposite of the Polish 11 operator. So I'll jump in that in a second. I'm just going to play you what she sounds like. And I'm hoping you can hear this one as well.
9024 oblique 34 9024 oblique 34 attention 1652 3.
So the reason this lady is called oblique is because she, as you can see here in the individual kind of traffic format, she starts with a 3-digit ID and then puts the oblique, which is your slash. What I quite like about as well this one, she says attention to raise awareness and make you aware of what's happened. So we'll just listen to the oblique again and then the attention.
Oblique 34 9024 oblique 34 attention 16.
And then she will actually start with a message. Now, it tells you a little bit more about at the bottom as well, where you can kind of see what's going off. For example, E11 schedules are twice weekly, follow year-round UTC, and it doesn't kind of pay attention of the daylight saving. Now, quite important, it says it's the Polish 11 operator opposite. And looking at the Polish one, there is a lot more history about this one, and it talks about characteristics or operation quirks. So every of these stations has something slightly different, which makes it very interesting kind of to see. Like you've had back in the World War, for example, when you've had people transmitting Morse code, everyone have their own little touch to it. And that's the same with these number stations. If they're, for example, Morse, and they're being live transmitted, everyone will have their own little touch to it. If it's a actual live voice recording, everyone will sound a little bit different. So as we've just explored as well, this German lady, rather than saying zwei for the number 2, she says so. And 5, which would be 5, she will call it 5. So they're all slight quirks to it, which make these transmissions kind of very unique. Talking about this one, for example, as well, it shows you how many transmissions we've had or how many schedules we've had. And as you can see on this one, for example, compared to 2010, we've had 15 schedules for E11, which is that English-speaking station. Now in 2020, we've had 33. So there seems to be an increase. Why that's happening? Haven't got a clue. It could be that there is more messages being sent to spies, or it's just because people have now started paying more attention to it. They're thinking, you know what, this we'll just have all the public on and just pretend that something's happening. So what I'm just going to do is I'm going to jump onto this new page in order that we can listen to this audio. I'm hoping she's starting very soon. So this could already be the beginning of the transmission. And in a few seconds, they're actually going to start to send the individual message. was hoping that she was going to say attention at some point to let us know that the transmission is starting. Because at the moment she's just in the group count.
906/00390.
So she'll just repeat this over and over, potentially now for another 10 minutes, before she will actually shout attention and then start sending its message. Now, as we're well aware, because it's such a short kind of wave, we need to tune into this. So this is why there's normally either a few minutes, in this case it could be up to 10 minutes, where she's just going to start shouting this repeated ID out to say, right, you need to listen to me, and she will just repeat it over and over to give this field agent, spy, whatever we want to call them, time to kind of tune in and listen to the correct frequency before she then actually starts sending the message. And then once again, obviously, she will repeat the initial message as well several times, just to allow the person, because yes, the frequency might slightly drift or anything like that, they can then keep chasing it to make sure they receive the actual message. Yeah, so she just keeps repeating it over and over, and from I can just double check that I think she will just do this for quite a few times before she will actually start the message. But yeah, this is certainly a good website you should have a look at. There is some very interesting stations which play up. What we can do is we can just kill it off for a second and go back. So, for example, as you can see now in this window, the one we were going to listen to, this F06, the French station, which is sending RTTY, it's going to be on again in 2 minutes, but it does say it may not always transmit. So looking at, for example, the next few kind of hours, there will be more transmissions being sent out. So we were just listening to E11. We've got F06A, F06A. So you can see there's a pattern. They're sending it 1915, 1930, 2000, 2015, 2030. So it's on the hour, 50 minutes, and then half past. And again, they may not always transmit. This one was one I wanted to listen to, which is the E07A, which again is that Englishman we've been talking about. So he'll be sending. Again, this website is very useful because it does show you the schedule for the coming week. It also shows you, for example, the target where it wants to be sending to. But what you can do is actually find out a little bit more about the individual stations as well. So if I just go up to the top again, you have your individual kind of English stations, German stations, Slavic, other, Morse, and you can kind of dial into them. It talks about military stations as well. So if they have ever kind of found out that there's any military stations sending information through, they will be targeted there. It gives you a lot more information about the number stations itself and the prefixes we were talking about. But the key thing is the station schedule, which is quite handy. Or, for example, if we go into this English page, it will tell you the one we just listened to, E11, is oblique. We know it's coming from Poland, and it then has got some counterparts. So S11A is the Slavic-speaking opposite of this English-speaking oblique. F03 will be the French version, and P03, I think, will be the Polish one. It used to have a German counterpart, but that's gone silent. It used to have the Slavic 11, which has also gone silent. Mike 03 for Morse, which has gone silent. And then there was F11, which was a French one. Again, that's gone silent. But if we look at the English-speaking stations, for example, we've got some which are based in Egypt, Lincolnshire Poacher and Cherry Pipe. That was the United Kingdom station, but we actually found out they were based in Cyprus. Israel has got some, Austria, Germany. So there's quite a few different countries involved in this. The 5 dashes, I don't know if there's an audio clip. So, for example, on this one, I think it should start with 5 individual dashes. Which, No. So, for example, why it's called 5 dashes, I think will be because for 5 times you will hear a 1000 hertz tone. So they have all these kind of weird names just because there's something unique about this individual station, and this is why they've been called that way. So they have their Enigma ID, which in this case is E13, but it's commonly known as 5 dashes. It gives you a bit of more information about it as well. It talks about that it was active from 1991 to early 1993. And then it's got some references and things like that. So it's a very useful page, priyom.org. And yeah, it's got various different information on there. You can join a worldwide receiver map as well. So if you have got the equipment to put it on the internet for other people to use, great. But it just shows you how many people are involved to kind of give you this massive kind of collaboration of people who are enthusiastic to kind of play all together. So here we can see, for example, this is the kind of world coverage of receivers, of people who are kind of partaking. You can see there's quite a few people in Europe, and especially, I mean, in the UK, we've got a few as well. God knows if we now find someone who's one of our colleagues. No, so Leicester would be our nearest. We have M7ECG, who's got a SDR receiver from 0 to 30 megahertz, which he's able to put up on the internet. So this is this website, for example. You can click on it, and then you can use his receiver to start playing around and listen. But yeah, have a look. I'll post all these links of these websites for you to use. They are very handy, and there's a lot of information kind of to be used. And yeah, if you have got to do some shortwave listening, have a tune around. Use the first website, that priyom.org, to find the frequency. And you don't need anything major. You just need to have a suitable antenna and obviously a shortwave receiver. And if you at some point manage to figure out what the messages are, do let me know, because I'm interested. And yeah, that's where we are, really, with these stations. A mystery which is still ongoing, and we've got really no clue what it's all about.